Hi there, this is Tony, and we're back on the bench. And this evening, we're going to be doing a service here on another Shimano ultralight model. So this is a Shimano MLX 100 ball bearing spinning reel. And this is a reel I've had for a number of years, and it's a neat little reel. It's very small, perfect for trout fishing on the streams. This recently came back from a trip from the Sierras, doing some trout fishing, and I actually had a problem with it where the line got tangled up underneath the bail, which has a tendency to happen sometimes. And so, but we're going to take this apart and we're going to do a service on it, cleaning, and get that line untangled out from underneath there and get it ready to do some more fishing. But Shimano's a company that's been around a long time, and they make their reels in Japan. And when I go fishing in the Sierras, Shimano ultralights is pretty much all I bring. For casting spinners and things of that sort, artificial lures. The Shimanos are just really nice and smooth. They got great drag systems. The ball bearings are great. So we're just gonna go piece by piece here and just do our best to clean all these pieces and parts off here as we go. Take our top cap off. So this is a disc drag system, as Shimano calls it. So there's top cap, and then there's this plastic ring, and then we got our spool here. We're going to clean the inside of this real quick, best that we can. This is spooled up with 4-pound test. And this is the drag system right here, is this big drag washer that's sitting here on top. It's actually two drag washers in this case. There's a thicker one and a thinner one. But that's it basically. The tension that's applied from that top cap presses down on there. And as you can see, this is what we're talking about. All that line is caught up in there, and that happens from time to time with some of these ultralights. I've had that happen. I always make it a habit to bring a spare with me usually and keep that in the bag. But there's 3 screws here that we need to take out. Get into our side plate here. Get those out of there. I definitely recommend having a set of some smaller screwdrivers on hand, some precision style screwdrivers. These are just from Harbor Freight, the ones I'm using, but I know Milwaukee makes a good kit that you can get at Home Depot, probably for I think about 15 bucks, 14 bucks, something like that. That's kind of similar to these. Klein makes a good set, good quality set. Okay, so we got our side plate, and so we're getting into some pieces and parts here. So we've got a bushing here. I like to keep these parts trays nearby. There's a couple of really thin washers that need to come out. We're going to clean up all these pieces and parts here. Got our cam, got our main gear that needs to come out. And sometimes it's a little difficult to get out, but it can be done. Nice clean gear, but we're gonna clean up all these pieces and parts off here the best that we can. So now, in order to get our main shaft out, we've got a set screw down here that needs to come out. We'll do that here with a little Phillips, number 1 Phillips. We got that screw there. Pull your axle shaft out, and now we can see the mess that we've made here underneath, and it's a lot easier to undo it once you get the axle shaft out. But as you can see, that would definitely impede the operation of a reel. We were catching a lot of fish that day, so some of these ultralights that I brought along, they were working pretty hard. So I'm going to clean this off the best that we can. We're going to take some 4-0 steel wool to this real quick and Just clean that up the best that we possibly can. The rest of this looks really good and clean, as it should. Okay, so now we've got a little set screw here in this capture that we need to take out in order to get our rotor off, because we want to get access to the main bearing so that we can service that bearing. Sometimes you just got to pry that capture out with a little screwdriver like so. And then got a nut here. I think that's a 10 mil. Yeah, it is. So I'm just using a 10 mil nut driver for that. There we go. Okay, so now our rotor comes off. We're just going to clean this up the best that we can. Make sure that there's no sand or dirt, things of that like in there. I'm going to take a little bit of reel oil to these crevices here for the bail springs real quick. Just a little bead of oil in those two spots right there. Okay, and work that back and forth. That's pretty much all you need to do there. Make sure that you're using oil that's meant for reels, though. I like to use Reel X. I like this spout on here. I've been hearing a lot of good stories about the Lucas oil that's made for fishing reels now. I haven't tried it yet myself, but I'm probably going to soon because I've been hearing a lot of good things. So we've got two screws here that hold down our main bearing, and so we definitely want to pull these out. We want to have a look at that main bearing and see what kind of shape that's in. These MLX series reels are pretty hard to come by these days. Also, the MLZs are getting a lot harder to come by. I've got an MLZ 10 right next to me that I'm also going to be doing a video on, hopefully soon. Okay, so hopefully you can pull this out. If you can't, you might need to spray a little bit of penetrating fluid on that. And in this case, I'm just going to gently take a pair of needle nose to this and see if I can pull this up like so. Okay, and there's our main bearing. Okay, and this is not a sealed design, and as you can see, you know, it's got some old grease built up in there, so we're definitely going to clean that off. We're going to hose that down with some penetrating fluid, but I want to just get the rest of these pieces and parts out here. So we got our block, and we've got our pinion gear, and there's a spacer here along with our anti-reverse ring and spacer. So and then the pinion gear. Okay, so all these pieces here, we're just going to take these off. And we're going to try to clean them up the best that we can. These should slide off like so. I'm just going to set all these pieces and parts down in there. I'm going to take some penetrating fluid to these, and so I'm using this Blaster Multimax. You know, WD-40 is fine. CRC Power Lube, Liquid Wrench makes good products for this kind of stuff. I just really want to clean up all these pieces and parts. And one thing I do like about this particular product is it comes with this regulator for the spray, so it's not spraying, you know, all over your work area. So that's kind of handy. I think it's about $6 at Lowe's, places like that. Okay, so now I just want to clean up the rest of the insides of this here real quick. So I'm just going to make use of my Q-tips here, and I'm just going to clean it up the best that we can here and get it ready to be put back together with fresh grease and fresh oil. Because you want to really get all that old residual grease out of there. Okay, so point of lube is a little dot of oil right there on that dog spring, like that. Okay, you could also do just a little bead of oil right here on the anti-reverse lever, you know, just so that you know, works its way in. But don't overdo the oil. You just need to do just a couple little drops in the right areas. That's all you need to do. Okay. Real simple. Okay, so now we're going to get into cleaning up all these pieces and parts here the best that we can. So we're going to start with our pinion gear. Take the toothbrush to that, clean that up real good, like so. I'm going to get another Q-tip out. I want to clean up the inside of this the best that I can. It's a little tight, but, you know, just get anything out of there that you possibly can. Okay. And then we got our spacer ring here. We need to put back in position. It needs to rest right there at the top of the gear, like so. And then this anti-reverse ring here is keyed, and so it can only go on in one way, basically. And then we got our spacer ring here. All right. And then I'm going to take some Pen Precision blue grease to this gear. Gear teeth on here, like so. Just a little bit there on the bottom. That's basically all you need to do there. Okay. And then I'm going to put this back in position. Now what needs to happen here, you have to have this oriented just right where that little knob is sticking out and it goes up in this back corner. It's a little difficult to see here on camera, but there's a little shelf sitting back there right above the screw hole right there. It's really dark and difficult to see it, but it's right there at the top, and you need to make sure that that little knob rests up against that just right. So it's basically like this. Okay, and that knob needs to rest there like so. Okay, now we're going to take our bearing and we're going to clean the inside of this bearing up the best that we can with a toothbrush and get all those ball bearings cleaned out real good. Okay, I'm just going to clean that off one more time with a little bit of this penetrating fluid here. And in theory, that could be it for the lubrication of this if you wanted it to be, especially being that this is really thick penetrating fluid lubricant. I'm going to be thorough with it though, and I'm just going to do a little flood of oil, of RealX oil in there just for good measure. Okay, let that really work its way down in there. Bearings for these are really difficult to come by now. So I recommend definitely, taking good care of these if you have, one of these reels. Any of the MLX series, basically. Okay, so we're resting that down in there. Just going to do a little bead of oil here on these little screw threads here, just so those are good, and I don't have to worry about snapping the heads off ever. I actually have a MLX 300 that I serviced recently, and I bought it used a number of years ago, and I've used it off and on, but when I bought it, it had some real rusted components on the inside, and it did some real damage to the bearing, and I had the hardest time getting that bearing out. I basically ended up compromising the pinion gear, and I had to kind of refile the teeth back down and whatnot because you can't get those parts anymore. And it's a reel that I like, and I wanted to keep it, and I didn't want to junk it and use it as a parts piece. So I'm just going to do a little bit more blue grease here on these teeth here, though. There we go. Okay, so that's our main bearing put back into position there. Just going to clean off a little bit of this oil. Okay, so now we're ready to put our rotor back on in position. Set that down like so. Then we got our nut that's got to go back on. And I do believe this is like an aluminum nut. It's very light, so Just be careful turning it. Give it a little snug turn, but you don't need to over tighten it, and then you should be able to put this capture back into position here. And in this case, I'm just going to kind of work this back into where the hole is and try to line this hole up here, like so. It should be right. Just right there. Do another little bead of oil on this guy here. A little set screw. Okay. So now we're ready to put pretty much all of our other pieces and parts back in here. So we're going to take some blue grease here to this little trough here, but before we do that, I'm just going to get one little piece of old gunked up grease out of there that I overlooked. I want to get all that old grease out of there. I don't want to see any of that in there. Okay, so we're going to put our main axle shaft back in position. We're going to do our blue grease on this shaft, like so. Don't need to get carried away with it, but you want just enough. Okay, we're going to slide that back down into position. Now don't forget, you've got your block, and you want to clean that off real good. Make sure that you don't have any old residual grease holding anything up in there. There's a little channel in here that you want to hit with the Q-tip. Make sure that's cleaned up, and then take your blue grease to that channel, like so. And then also a little dab here on this knob here, like so. And we're going to set that back in position. Roll our shaft back down, like so. And then we got our set screw here. Again, we'll do a little bead on that guy as well. It really pays off to have good, clean parts and components. There's nothing worse than being out there fishing and then, your reel fails on you because, something was rusted or corroded or over-greased. There is such a thing as over-lubricating your reel, and it's something you don't want to do. So, okay, so now we've got all these pieces and parts here that we're going to take out, and we're going to get all these ready to go back. Okay, so we got our cam. We got these pieces here with our bushing and these guys. One thing I am going to note about this stuff, it's really, really thick synthetic lubricant, and sometimes that's helpful, just for putting pieces back. Then they're kind of lubed up a little bit. I can't really say that for the parts that really need to be greased per se, but when it comes to the parts that just need to be oiled, a penetrating fluid like that works really, really well. So, yeah, I'm just going to clean these teeth out here. They're already pretty clean as it is, I'd say, for the most part. Okay. And we'll take our blue grease to these teeth, like so. I'll do the outside here as well as our shaft, main gear shaft. Okay, and we're gonna slide that back down into position like so. Okay, and then you got your cam. It has to go back in position. Just like that. And we'll do just a little bit more blue grease here on the outside of that. Put our bushing back in the side plate there, and then we've got our thin little copper washers. Slide those back into position like so. And I'll just do just a little bit more blue grease on top of those guys there. Side plate goes back on like that. A little bead on those threads like so. I've got 3 screws, 1, 2, 3. going to spin those up. But as you can see, it doesn't take much to work on these reels. This particular model is pretty basic, I think, and nice. It doesn't have a sophisticated drag system to it, like some of the rear drag systems. Okay, so we're going to put our spool back in position, like so. Put our drag cap back on. Do a little bit of blue grease here on this handle shaft. And I also like to do, you hear that little chatter in there, handle chatter as I call it. A little bead of oil right there in that little crevice will usually get rid of that. If not, you could just hit it with a little bit of penetrating fluid, which in this case I might do, just because it's a little thinner than the oil and it'll seep down in there a little better maybe. And you could also hit it from this side too as well. And that's all it takes right there. And all that's gone. And we'll clean that up a little bit because I don't like getting all these penetrating fluid smells on these little reels. I like to try to avoid that the best that I can, but sometimes it's unavoidable. Okay, and we'll slide that back into position like so, and we'll do a little bead of oil on this thread here. Spin this up, handle screw. Alright, and we'll put our handle cap back on, handle screw cap I should say. Okay, I'm just going to trim this line here so it doesn't get all tangled up, but try this out, make sure it's working good. Anti-reverse is great, nice and smooth. Bail's really, really good. And as far as the drag goes, I mean, we got some good clicks there. We'll tighten this up a little bit more, and it's a very basic drag system, so it's working real nice. And we'll back it off so that those washers don't hold memory, of course. And there you have it. That is the Shimano MLX Model 100 ball bearing ultralight spinning reel, all serviced up and ready to go. So thanks again for watching. This is Tony with Back on the Bench. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more, please subscribe. We'll see you next time.